Disclaimer: this video is of humorous nature only. The author does not seek to insult or humiliate anyone. The video may contain profanity. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Story 1. One party making a whole ducton of concessions for the other, and that being unidirectional. One person is compromising, but the other is just taking and getting everything they want with no compromise in return. Desperate people let themselves get taken advantage of because they're worried they'll never find another partner, or they'll be too old to have kids soon, or whatever. The second someone who isn't selfish comes along to attract the downtrodden partner, or when the selfish prick hits them or some other such Rubicon crossing, the relationship falls apart like wet tissue paper. Story 2. Correcting minor irrelevant details when the other is telling a story to a separate group. So last Thursday, we went to the Olive Garden, and just as the breadsticks arrived, you wouldn't believe it, but my old college roommate, who I haven't seen in years, gets seated at the table next to us. Actually, honey, it was when the salad arrived. Story 3. And my Satyo, when my ex-best friend said she was mad at her girl. So while her girl was driving, she sat in the passenger seat and put the car in park. Also had the cops called on them a couple of times. Still together, always post captions like, "We have our hard times, but we are so strong together. Give me a break." Through Story 4. Me randomly runs into some acquaintance accompanied by someone who is not their partner spouse. Also me sees said acquaintance posting on social media some pic with their partner spouse, and kids if they have them, with a caption about how they're their whole world, and thanking them for making them a better person every single time. Edit. As a courtesy for the people who found my post confusing. Let me clear up that I meant they were doing something inappropriate with a person who is not their partner spouse. I assume the fact that this was a response to a question about what screams that a couple isn't going to make it would be enough to contextualize this, instead of thinking I meant that having any kind of interaction with anybody who is not your partner is wrong. But hey, coffee cups say caution hot for a reason. Story 5. One that I haven't seen mentioned yet. When the mother, family, or friends dictates the relationship. I understand pointing out legitimate concerns, red flags out of concern. But the amount of jealousy and toxic behavior I come across on Reddit of the mother family, friend intentionally ruining the relationship with the help of the so is insane. Story 6. Power imbalance. It could come from anywhere. Differences in education, appearance, earning ability, social skills, level of luck, amount of self-discipline, mismatched libidos, ability to lie, deceive, gaslight. When there's an inequality in power, there's a chance for contempt to plant a seed. Once there's a seed of contempt, the relationship is doomed. Have seen this so many times. Story 7. When one or both of the people initiated the relationship via cheating on someone else. My rule of thumb is if they'll cheat on someone else with you, they'll cheat on you with someone else. In my experience, the narcissistic character flaws that would cause someone to cheat in the first place are almost impossible to change into adulthood. Why the duck? Anyone would want to be with someone who felt okay with emotionally destroying someone else is beyond me. Story 8. People who tease their partners, but it's mean. Tonight, my husband made a rude but accurate joke about my awful singing voice and immediately apologized BC. It came out kind of harsh, like, "Why TF do you listen to music I hate in the shower and sing along with your awful pitchy voice?" We were stoned and alone, and he apologized for ripping on me, and I promptly reminded him that he is just as bad, and we had a laugh. Couples who are like this in an aggressive, mean way in public aren't going to make it. It's very clear. Having a sense of humor is very important in a relationship, at least to me, but not when it's intentionally pointed, cruel, and in public, the latter of which is degrading. Story 9. I just expressed that I couldn't go on with someone I was with for a little over a year. There were a lot of things I couldn't reconcile with, but the main deciding factor is that his ex was in his friend group, and he would go out drinking and hanging out with them a bunch. I've never met the ex or half his friends because he didn't want to invite me. He was worried that it would be awkward for them and didn't want them to exclude him because of me. Sucks, but I've definitely learned a bit more about what I need from a relationship. Despite this, he is a sweet person. He wants to work on himself, and I hope that we can remain friends and supports for each other. Story 10. If one of them has no respect for the other. Common examples? 1. Making fun of the other person's hobbies. 2. Making fun of the other person's quirks. 3. Embarrassing the other person in front of your friends and playing it off as a joke. 4. Pushing the limits of what the other person can tolerate. 5. Comparing your BFGF to someone else's. BFGF6. Gaslighting the other person. Another thing I look out for is if one person continues to hang out with duckboy, easy girlfriends and takes advice from them. Those kinds of people will drag you down and ruin your relationships 100% of the time. Story 11. According to the Gottman Institute, which studies relationships, it's in the small interactions. They talk about bids for connection, which means anytime your spouse partner wants to interact. They give the example of one person saying, "Oh, look a bird," and how the other reacts either builds trust or chips away at it. A simple, "oh yeah," is enough to build trust. They didn't have to do much at all. Ignoring their partner or responding negatively by sighing, berating, mocking chips away at trust. Regular little positive interactions shows a healthy relationship. Regular negative ones show an unhealthy one. Story 12. When one side seems to do all the work in the relationship, those don't last very long. Generally, they end in one of two ways. Either the person doing all the work realizes they're doing like all the work and tells the other person to duck off, or the person doing none of the work keeps raising their standards for the amount of work the other person needs to do for them until the other person fails and they start shopping around for some other poor sucker to grind the will to live out of. Story 13. When you can feel that they are not speaking to each other. They might put on a show at the restaurant or with friends, but you notice that every time they have to talk to keep up the show, the other party answers with as few words as possible, with no emotions. When me and my ex-wife were getting closer to the end, the silent treatment was our go-to trick, both of us. It really quickly gets tiresome, and other people notice fast. Story 14. I have to ask my husband if I can go. One party gets mad if the other even so much as looks at another person, or even has a celebrity crush or something. Joint Facebook accounts, every post they make is about how much they're in love. They only talk about each other or their relationship. One of them has a substance problem. Story 15. Point scoring. Keeping track of who won the argument, who spent last weekend with friends and for how long. Snippy jabs about those things in front of friends and family. Then, when an argument inevitably breaks out, bringing out that mental tally and using it as verbal weapon to win the argument. Seen it happen in a few couples now. All divorced within 10 years. Story 16. My one friend has a GF with plenty of emotional baggage. She wasn't feeling satisfied, so she broke up with him. They got back together maybe a few days later. Fast forward 10 months. She again is not feeling satisfied. Cheats on him. Lies about her whereabouts to do said cheating. Admits it to him and breaks up with him. 3 weeks later, they're getting back together again. So, yeah, to answer the question, it's whatever they got going on. Story 17. Obviously, not every situation is black or white, right? I've been a bridesmaid 16 times, and I can tell you that the couples that spend tons and tons of money on a wedding are usually the ones that don't last in my experience. It's because they are usually more interested in having a big party than they are being in love with each other and making a marriage work. Story 18. Whenever all they do is complain about each other and have nothing nice to say about each other to anyone else. I know when a couple is going to last a long time whenever they are able to joke around with each other, but are still able to cut it out when each other needs reassurance and love. They know that balance because they pay attention and care for each other. Story 19. Meanness. When you hear any kind of really insulting, degrading comment towards the other. I've been happily married 26 years, and even in our worst disagreements, we've never resorted to saying mean things to each other. When I hear a couple doing that, I just know it's not going to last because the respect is gone. Thank you all for watching. Watch even more great stories on my channel.